So welcome everyone to the Avasant Empowering Beyond, this amazing panel today, the topic being digital redux, reviving the human experience. So we have a great set of panelists here today. My name is Renée Lahti. I am going to be your facilitator for the panel, former CIO and Avasant fellow. I'm going to just guide us through this, probably one of the more interesting topics as we come out of COVID or coming out of COVID, as it relates really to the human experience and technology. So before I set a little more tone, let you get to know our three panelists a little better. I will let Marianne, you take over first with a quick introduction.
Thanks, Renee. It's so great to be with all of you today for this great event. My name is Marianne Gallo. I'm the head of global marketing and communications for Moon Creative Lab. Moon Creative Lab is a venture studio meant to unlock the entrepreneurial spirit of Mitsui Group's 44,000 employees worldwide. So we actually help them create startups from zero to growth, which is a really exciting space. A little background on me. I'm also a former entrepreneur, having started a company focused on the diversity and inclusion space, but the majority of my career I've led global communications teams, change management in technology, working at companies such as VMware as well as Hitachi, and started my career as a journalist, both working in radio and television.
Thank you, Marianne. Okay, Mark.
Hi all. It's very nice to be here. Very happy to spend some time with you. Mark Taylor. I lead digital experience for Cognizant. I spent the previous 25 years of my career in the agency world, and quite recently made a shift into more of the consultancy technology world. My practice spans all forms of experience: customer experience, employee experience, partner experience. And we have approximately 17,000 people. And they range from behavioral economists through designers to front-end developers. We organize our team into pods because our sense is, and you'll hear this, I think, as we go through, our sense is the closer we become to solving whole problems for our clients, the more successful we and they will be. Thanks again.
Awesome, Mark. So happy to have you with us. And last but surely not least, Yuri.
Thank you, Renée. And hello, everyone. It's great to be here on this wonderful panel. My name is Yuri Aguiar. I'm the Chief Enterprise Data Officer for WPP. WPP is one of the largest media companies in the world, if you haven't heard about them already. My team focuses on internal business data sets with the intent of helping better decision-making in business, right? So my area focuses on three very specific areas: insights that will drive business effectiveness, business efficiencies, and finally, my favorite area, which is a part of this conversation today, automated insights, leveraging a lot of RPA, AI, et cetera, and many other exponential technologies with the help of our technology group. I have been in former lives a CIO, CTO, a leader of business transformation and innovation most recently. And I have over 20 years of global experience across 3 continents. Thank you, Renée. Over to you.
Thank you, Yuri. Well, so let's just, my job here is to set a little bit of context, throw a couple little factoids out there, and then it's really going to be about hearing from this distinguished set of panelists. So let's go to the next slide, and let's talk a little bit about what is digital redux. It's kind of a mouthful. And let's just take a look here. As you imagine, COVID-19 has done a whole lot to impact all of our lives. And I think we've probably been on more Zoom topics on this over the last year and a half. But we're kind of, the pendulum is starting to swing back. We're beginning to lose the human touch and really over depend on technology as a necessity. If we just look at a couple of these examples, which are just mind blowing, 900% online groceries spike, unbelievable. I mean, it shouldn't be a surprise. We all know how we could or couldn't get to the grocery store. Digital channels like Google, 29% up. Messaging of WhatsApp, 111%. So if you think about all of those things, oh, and IKEA, we can't forget the virtual furniture store on your phone to figure out what to order from IKEA to put in your real house. All amazing things. However, it also tends to have that lose the human touch, and we become over dependent on technology. And you also start to hear lots of vocabulary. I think we all said a few of them today, right? AI, ML, AR, VR. And the goal really is digital without creating a unique human experience, whether it be for an internal employee, external customer, in the long run is not going to do us good as human beings. And so we recognize we're kind of at this smart pivot point. How are we going to be able to use technology in our business, digital models, our channels, while humans seamlessly feel like they're still connected? And now I'm just going to tee it up for our first question, and I will let whoever wants to go first with it. But the question is really a general one, so let's all kind of understand each other's perspectives a little bit. What is each of you as panelists' definition of human-centric digital model?
For me, it's all about empathy. And empathy meaning, in this sense, how do we best understand and meet the needs of our different audiences? How will we know we are meeting them? And how will we adapt the model as expectations do? So it's how we create the digital model to be the most responsive to the needs of our different audiences. That, for me, is a very simplistic, but still, I think, meaningful definition of human-centric digital model.
I totally agree with what Mark just talked about, with empathy being the root of it all, with human-centered design or a human-centric digital model. You know, at Moon, we're a venture studio, and we're all about human-centered design. A lot of design research goes into really getting at the heart of really what problems humans are trying to solve. And I'll give you an example. We're working on this venture called Sashire, and they're really trying to solve for the problem of this labor shortage in Japan. So they're, for whatever reason or multiple reasons, a lot of people are having a shortage of labor due to their age, appearance, disabilities, or place of residence. So what they're using is very cool technology, avatar and robot technology, to meet a real human need. For example, they're conducting experiments to use these technologies where a real human is behind the avatar or robot, and they can conduct service jobs without actually having to be there. So working in a karaoke studio, for example, to take orders, or even doing cross-cultural student exchange programs where a teacher or student can be there via robot. And we're even experiencing with employee engagement. So for example, due to this pandemic, a lot of employees cannot travel, right? We can't go to our different offices around the world. So what if we could use a robot to actually do these virtual business trips, because we're not having to travel, and we lose that kind of human touch. But what if you can use these great technologies to do that? So again, it really has a lot to do with empathy. It's understanding what that real human problem is. And I don't care what technology you use, it's just an enabler to that.
Well, so Yuri,
Right.
agree or disagree, and maybe a story or experience that you can share on really what is your version of human-centric digital model?
I'm going to build on what Mark and Marianne have said so far, right? So technology is extremely pervasive, as we know. It's in all aspects of our lives, but it was not always like that. So because it is pervasive, very often the first port of call in a business problem solving exercise is technology. And that's where the solutions get complicated really quickly. First of all, they take a long time to deliver because the goalposts are not really set. So we don't even know where they are to start with. So it seems like a really complex undertaking. And they also garner the least adoption from the human it was designed to help, because it started with the technology first idea. And then if you're going after the human-centric model, it is the whole idea of making humans benefit from a digitized process or product, not spin up the technology and hope for the best, right? So we're doing it very often in reverse, which causes some of these challenges to be less human-centric. So the human has to be the beneficiary of all of this, not the other way around. And I think back to an example of the 1950s, right? When it was, on average, it would take about 55, 57, 60 hours to do household chores. And that was 57 hours a week is the going fact on this one. But mechanical revolutions that were focused around the human-centered experience, and those revolutions and evolutions and transformation, automation, entertainment have significantly changed that trajectory. And the same principles apply today in this fourth generation of automation, right? So we're going now from that mechanical automation to a very digital automation. And my personal experience, Renee, actually came, it was a hard one because we were applying RPA for the first time to a very complex financial process. And my lessons were hard because we said RPA may be the answer instead of going the other way around. But what happened was when we finished the project, I wrote a little paper that covers 7 steps of an RPA project, and 6 of them were non-technology. The first one was direct rejection, because we said robotics. The second one was fearful acceptance. The third was more of a process alignment to make sure all the nuances that were manually conducted across the organization were captured. Then we had the functional buy-in. Then we had the human resource buy-in, because you're bringing bots into the environment that were typically work done by humans. And then the auditors had to buy in, because we had a component of checks and balances that had to be met for statutory reporting and so on. And finally, the technology played a role in this. So in my experience, the 6 steps that led up to the technology were the more important one. And that caused us to create a very simple mantra we call the SMART digital transformation process. And it's an acronym for survey, map, align, research, then transform, not the other way around.
Perfect. That's great. So Yuri, I'm going to pick up on that theme of kind of misperceptions or missteps, and maybe just, this is question number 2 for everybody. So obviously one of the biggest challenges, and I'm going to try and not generationalize myself, whether it be WALL-E, R2-D2, Optimus Prime, or Transformer Arnold Schwarzenegger, that's what comes to mind in the early days of AI, AR, ML, chatbot, you name it. And there's always a counterproduction no matter where it is, whether you jump into the deep end of RPA as your very first step, or even if you do it in the right way, at some point there's some counterproductive churn that happens. And it's usually because of misinformation, misperception, or an AI RPA company selling this chatbot can replace X number of people. So sometimes it's a marketing thing. What I'd ask that each of you maybe tell one of those stories, and then what did you or your organization do to course correct it? A little bit, Yuri, of what you started, but I'm going to pitch this one to Marianne to start, and then Mark, I'll have you go second.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a tendency to over-rotate once technology comes into play, because you get very caught up in the cost savings, the efficiencies, and the responsiveness of what technology can provide. But in a recent survey, human interaction actually matters now more than ever. 82% of US respondents and 74% of non-US consumers actually want more human interaction in the future, not less. And so I think that's an important input into enterprises and consumer-oriented businesses as they're thinking about their technology strategy, is really thinking about meeting people where they expect technology to be and actually delighting them in those interactions. So I can give you an example. So in California, we have this startup called Carbon Health, and it has to do with mobile first experiences, and they use really smart ways of using automated responses for people from a convenience perspective, especially if people are wanting to take COVID tests now and getting them quickly. It's all automated, your files are there, but they're extending that into things like health records, setting up appointments, and conducting a video experience for them. So they just secured, I think, $100 million in Series C funding. That whole experience of meeting, having smart technology where people are at and where their expectations are is really great. And knowing when a real life person needs to interact. So I can tell the difference very, very slightly in terms of when it's an automated response and when there's a real person messaging me on the back end. And I think that's a really important emphasis to know, is that when you're thinking of your technology strategy, is understanding that people are very sophisticated now in terms of where technology meets them, and really understanding what that experience is, because knowing when it's a chatbot and you're getting frustrated, and knowing when a real human can be behind it, and where those intersections are, is really important, because people are craving that human interaction. I think the pandemic really amplified that. And so I think a lot of companies can take advantage of that, but you really have to think through, and that goes back to the empathy point of where your consumers are, where your customers are.
Thanks, Marianne. And hey, Carbon Health, I knew that name. I actually used that at the San Jose airport to fly to from Hawaii.
Right.
And it was seamless. It was a pretty cool experience. So now I know why I know that name. So Mark, how about for you? A misperception, misinformation, and then how did you or your organization course correct it?
So I think I would absolutely agree with what Marianne just said. The first the first reaction of enterprises is, this is great. I can take costs out of my business by implementing some form of AI and ML. Excuse me. And we made the same mistake. It's a natural reaction, I think, to streamline processes and so on and so forth. The truth is, though, after a while, we realized that well-employed AI and ML allows companies of scale to behave more like humans in a digital world. And I'll give the silly example is, have you ever said thank you to Alexa? And most people have.
Yes. And she says you're welcome, usually.
Indeed, but you know, this is, you know, I really do believe, and I'll get back to the point that Marianne just made. I really do believe that there's a great place for AI and ML in improving the experience, the customer experience, really enriching the customer experience. The key, though, as you rightly said, is at some point you need a human. At some point, but AI allows you to dedicate your humans to those key moments that matter most. And those moments that matter most are the moments in which your consumers are most vested in the outcome of the interaction. Therefore, the human relationship is just extraordinarily helpful. An example, it's a publicly available example, is USAA, who used RPA and other technologies and approaches to reduce the time their humans spent in their contact center. And they use that time to train the contact center employees in financial well-being. So think about that. So this is not, hey, this is answer A to question A, this is answer B to question B, and so on. This is contextual. Be contextually aware of what is the underlying driver of the question you're being asked. And I think that's fascinating. So again, I think this sense of really using AI and ML to free up humans to do what humans should be doing, or can most effectively do.
So Mark, thank you. That totally resonates with me as a CIO, and leverage technology for business value all the time, or shift left, because back in the days of the internal IT call centers around the globe that I supported, none of those guys and gals want to get, I forgot my password one time, let alone 100, right? So get rid of those. And none of us remember how to remember our password talking to a human when we're at home with our bank or our online shopping. There's a link, you do it and you're done. So guess what? Because of that, I call, and again, you got to get employees comfortable with, you're not going to lose your job. I actually developed a job description or a job position called chatbot handlers. And it's that contextual things. Let the thing do the thing, but between error handling and context and making it more human, you actually are giving those employees that much more of an enriching and career path than answering, I forgot my password, here's how you reset it 1,000 times a day. So perfect. I still haven't seen that job posted anywhere else, but I think chatbot handlers or AI handlers are a job of the future. So Yuri, last but not least, so what one misperception or misinformation do you think has kind of come out? And obviously you shared your own deploying chatbots, but maybe another story. And then how did you see the correction happen, or whether it's you or the organization?
So the one thing I want to just maybe counter a little bit on what Mark said is that even though it is well-intentioned to allow the automation to do some portion of the work and enable the humans to get to the end result, what we see sometimes in real life is that there's a misperception of what these things can do. So it always starts from this, what value can I get out of it first? Why am I making this investment? And it all depends on the type of leadership you have, right? Are they reactive or are they visionary? What end of the spectrum are they? If you've got visionary and dynamic leadership, they already look at the output, how they're going to improve their growth, their expansion, their new lines of products, etc. If you look at it from a reactive perspective, all you're going to get is, how am I going to cut costs to the bottom line? How am I find efficiencies, and so on and so forth. So you've got that. And then I think just to manage this misinformation, there's a powerful countermeasure is not telling people they're wrong about it. Instead, prove that they're wrong about it in a way that says, how do you have the idea of an automation champion in your company? How's that for an idea, right? So you put somebody in there who is your spokesperson, not just talking the talk, not talking about vaporware, but actually talk about things that they've actually done and improve them. Not the, what's in it for me, but what are you not getting out of it if you don't do it, right? And the case in point was, it comes down to innovation in this case, I think. And I'm a big believer that innovation is never in the head offices. It's always at the edges where your customers meet your employees, and the employees are around the water cooler, not for the last year at least, but solving problems in real life every day. And one such example was a qualitative quantitative solution that we built during the pandemic. And the idea came from a very bright employee with just 2 or 3 years of experience, right? So now get this, we've got an innovation hub, but the idea came from an employee with 2 or 3 years of experience. Now she was evaluating and aggregating tons of data, watching these video links on various media properties around the world, doing a quantitative analysis of how much clients were spending on that ad, and then also looking at the qualitative elements of then the empathy and all of the subjective elements and facets of the ad, and pulling it together. And long story short, we helped her get into an automated method of aggregating and analyzing large volumes of data. Now, as an analyst coming out of a very big school in the US, what she did was she took all of that information that took her 6 weeks or 7 weeks sometimes to analyze, and now did it in 24 hours. Her response to her client, her value to the organization, everything, to Mark, to your point, improved significantly. And even though it's a beta version, there are so many of our big client teams that want to get to that point. And all she did was take 2 exponential technologies, put them together without knowing what they did. She was just curious. And what we got out of it is potentially a great patentable product. I don't think you can regulate the ideas or course correct by saying, that's not the right idea, or however you want to communicate that. I think the company is best served by managing the idea from incubation to production, teaching them when to pivot on the strategy if it isn't working, and then make that success a springboard for communication through your automation champions in the organization.
That's great. So I'm going to just take that, because I heard little bits and pieces of, well, not saying the words, change management showed up in that answer, Yuri. So let's jump to that question a little bit. So I want to pivot slightly. I mean, first of all, let's just be clear. There is no single recipe or right answer for doing change management. Having done it multiple times, every time you do it, you over communicated. Nope, you didn't communicate enough. No, you didn't use the right communication channels. So we all know that. And we also know that it took a lot of change management, to your point, to get people to start doing this and trusting it. The AI, the ML, the chatbot. Well, guess what? Now we need to look at change management to kind of get us back to that human-centric experience. And you have to find those champions, those change champions. Who's ready to embrace it? And what is your philosophy on change management? And you kind of started in on that topic, that it's not what's in it. You got to address the what's in it for me, and then move on to kind of a framework of some sort. Mark, what's your thought? Because I know you kind of define change management slightly differently.
Yeah, honestly, I do think that often we've seen our clients get caught up in change management. So in fact, change management becomes the project, not improving the customer experience being the project. So we do have to be a little bit careful, but everything you said, I want to be careful and not in any way indicate a flippancy around change management. But let me give you perhaps an example, and I won't name the client, but it's a very big North American insurance company, and they have spent hundreds of millions of dollars in their digital transformation efforts, but their